purpose.
Will the gentleman yield?
Spitzer, do you yield for question? Gentleman yields.
Mr. Spitzer, Dr. Spitzer,
Yes, sir.
in your amendment, you're reducing monies for STD and HIV?
I'm moving the money from the STD HIV into absence education, yes. That's correct.
Okay. Now, you will agree with me that in terms of the need, there would be a need for monies for STD and HIV as well as for abstinence, right?
Absolutely, and I am, there was to be $191 million moving over a 2-year period over biennium. I would move $3 million of that, moving it to $188 million. The current ratio, if passed, would be $188 million to 8. So
right,
we're still very far favoring 25 times STD prevention, AIDS prevention over abstinence education.
But the reality is, in the state of Texas, Texas has the 3rd highest number of HIV diagnoses in the country. Are you aware of that?
And we're funding it 25 times greater. Yes, sir, I am.
We're funding it 25 times greater to abstinence?
To abstinence education. We're funding it at the full level the federal government wishes to. Like I said, if we went lower.
Okay. But in the base appropriations bill, are you aware that we doubled the amount of money on abstinence from where it was to the amount that we put into the bill?
I was not aware of that.
Right. Well, we substantially increased the amount of money going to abstinence programs. And are you aware that in respect to the abstinence programs, that those dollars are being given out to various, let's say, organizations? I mean, you're aware of that?
I am aware of that, yes. My wife actually works on the board of one of those various organizations.
Right.
She doesn't work on the board. It's an unpaid position. But
right, and with respect to those organizations, and really I wasn't going to stand up because I voted to provide the additional money for abstinence, but you're aware that those organizations self-report, which means we don't directly audit them. They provide us with a report of what they are doing. They're one of the few organizations where they provide their own reporting to the state. And the reason why I'm raising the issue is that when we are taking money from HIV, from individuals with HIV, I mean, do you not think that it is significant that Texas has the 3rd highest number of people with HIV?
I think that's
not significant?
I think it's significant, and I think we're still addressing that to the point of 25 times what we're doing for anything else. And again, up to the level that the federal government asked us to do it so that we continue to get the matching funds.
Right, but one of the reasons why we're addressing it at 25% higher, and you're comparing it to abstinence, but I'm talking about people who are walking around in the state of Texas, men and women, who are currently suffering from this particular ailment that need to be treated. We already know that they exist, and they need the care. They need the health care. I mean, do you not see the difference between someone who is already diagnosed and a program where we are providing millions of dollars just for abstinence programming? Is there not a significant difference here?
To read it directly out of this is HIV, STD prevention. This is not about treatment of people who currently have the disease.
But the reality is,
we need to continue to currently treat people who have the disease.
I understand that. But we do know in the state of Texas that 1 out of 6 people with HIV in the United States do not know that they are infected. Texas has the 3rd highest number of HIV diagnoses in the country. And I think you will agree with me that instead of cutting from this particular strategy, quite frankly, we need to be doing more. Is it okay with you to have people walking around in the state of Texas that are undiagnosed, but they have HIV? Is that okay with you?
I would prefer that they're diagnosed.
And don't you think that
provide appropriate treatment?
And in order to get appropriate treatment, we need the resources, correct? The monetary resources.
There are several methods of preventing HIV, and we should be educated in all of those.
Right. And the point that I'm trying to make, is it not a good objective that for the state of Texas to be in the business of saving people's lives?
Absolutely, we should be. And abstinence will prevent many cases of HIV, certainly not all, and it's certainly not foolproof. but it does prevent many cases of
Well,
HIV.
how much?
So we're treating the same thing. We're just going about it different ways. But I agree completely.
Then how much money?
It needs to be prevented.
How much money would you want to place in the abstinence program? How much money would you want to put there?
Right now, we're putting $8 million.
How much money do you think is needed to be put there?
The amount of money that needs to be put
there. How much money do you think is needed to go into the abstinence program? If you had your brothers, how much money would you put there?
Originally, I was trying to put $10 million in there total, which would be $5 million plus another $5 million. And so as it is now, I'm down. I'm doing $8 million. And so, frankly, some of the organizations that you mentioned don't take the funding. And so there's still a lot of AIDS education that goes on out there with non-governmental funding.
Well, I understand that.
But I do prefer that if we're going to fund it, that we should, as a rule, do what's valuable in their community. In my community, 25 to 1 would be considered a large amount of funding for STD AIDS prevention. In other communities, it may not be appropriate. Maybe they did 30 or 50 to 1.
How much money is in the base bill for abstinence? How much money is in the base appropriation bill for abstinence?
There's $5 million.
Started off with 5?
5.
Because I believe there's 10 in the base bill. How much is in, I'm talking about the base appropriation bill that's on the, and how much money is in the bill that's on the floor today? That's already for abstinence on the floor today.
In the number that I had seen, it was $5 million to $191 million. I'm not sure if that was per biennium. I was under the impression that was for the biennium and not for the per year.
No, and I stand to be corrected, but I do believe we doubled the amount of money that's in the abstinence program from what was in the base bill. By the time this bill went through the entire appropriations committee, I believe we doubled that amount. Now, I stand to be corrected. Let's assume that there's $10 million in the bill that's before the House floor today. How much are you saying to us that should be put in the abstinence program? How much money do you want to put in the abstinence program?
$13 million. It depends on what it is exactly. But when I look at that, I look at priorities, and our priorities need to be that we're going to talk to people about abstinence education at least 1 hour out of every 25 times.
I understand that you want it to be a priority, but I'm trying to figure out what is the monetary need. How much money need to be placed in the abstinence program before you believe we have met that objective? What is your goal?
My goal is for everybody to be abstinent until they're married.
Well, and my goal is for everybody to be walking around AIDS-free, HIV-free, and to me, that's a goal. But the question that I'm trying to ask from you today, how much money would you put in the abstinence program that you would be satisfied with? How much money do you want? Just how much money do you want?
I want enough money to accomplish the goal, and right now, not everybody is there. For either your goal or my goal.
Well, what goal are we seeking? I mean, is it based on some study? Is it based on some report? When do we know we have met that amount? If you're saying to me you need $50 million in abstinence, tell me where you're getting that number, and then we can appropriate $50 million. I'm just trying to figure out how much do you need in order to satisfy your objective.
My objective, again, is so everybody knows that abstinence is the best way to prevent HIV. Abstinence is the best way to prevent sexually transmitted diseases. We're clearly not at that stage yet.
Okay, but how much money will be needed to achieve your objective?
I would like to have as much as we could.
You want as much as we're willing to give you. So there's really no end. Basically, you will take as much money as people are willing to give you. If we gave you $1 billion on abstinence, would that be enough? Or would you want 2? Or would you want 3? The point that I'm trying to make, what is the fiscal connection between what you are asking for and the return for the people in the state of Texas? How do I budget for your request?
It's very well laid out here, and I think that would be adequate for this.
But as a budget writer, what measuring rod do I use to determine when I have met your objective?
I think this is a great start right here, and I would turn to you being the expert budget writer and let me know.
Mr. Schaefer raises a point of order. Gentleman's time's expired. Point of order is well taken and sustained. Mr. Turner, for what purpose?
For an extension of time, please, sir.
Members, Representative Turner has moved to extend the member's time. Their objection.
Oh,
Members' first extension of time is usually granted.
thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There is none. Gentleman's time is extended.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield for a quick question?
Gentleman will yield for a question.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Spitzer. Do you think that there is an amount that's too much for abstinence training?
Personally, I do not.
So abstinence training abstinence education is very important, correct?
It's very important.
And so there's no amount that you can put on abstinence training, because when you have abstinence training, that prevents a lot of other things that we're dealing with, correct?
It does extend well beyond the realm of STDs, yes, sir.
Right, and so to fund, I mean, we all make decisions and we all make bad decisions, but to continue to fund decision-making by people, I think is a dangerous precedent to set, don't you?
Yes, sir, I would agree with that.
Okay, so thank you for this amendment. I don't think we can have enough money for abstinence training, because the matriculation of that affects a lot of things in our society. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, balance for what purpose?
Gentleman yield?
Mr. Do you yield?
I'll yield for a question.
Gentleman
Yes.
yields.
Did you know, I just wanted to make it a point, Chairman Spitzer Turner is an excellent debater and has very good points, as he always does. But one thing I did want to point out was he mentioned that HIV, Texas is number 3 in HIV infections in the country. It probably because we're the second largest state in population. California is roughly 38 million people. We have 27 million, and we're 36% larger than the third state, New York and Florida, right at 19 million. So I just want to take that in context. I want to make that point. I don't know if you were aware of that.
I was not. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Senator Broadus, for what purpose?
may I inquire of the representative? We yield for a question?
Yield for
Yeah,
question.
I'll yield for a question.
Gentleman yields.
You know, Representative Turner, Scott Turner, brought up a very good point that in front of your name there's a prefix, right? And that prefix is doctor.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not talking doctor like I'm a doctor of law. I'm talking medical doctor, correct?
That is correct.
And you feel as a medical doctor that the position you're taking on, not just from a fiscal standpoint, but the actual position that you're taking on this issue is prudent for somebody in the medical community, a scientist?
Yes, I do.
You really do?
Yes.
You're going to stand here in front of these men and women as Dr. Spitzer, not Representative Spitzer, and believe that this is a prudent amendment to take.
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I move passage.
Mr. Turner?
Would the gentleman yield for a question?
You know, we'll be back on the amendment in a moment. He's left the front mic. Anyone wishing to speak on for or against the amendment to the amendment?
Chair recognizes Mr. Turner of Harris to speak in opposition to the amendment.
Right. On the, Mr. Speaker, members, this is on the amendment to the amendment, and I believe under the amendment to the amendment, the money is being pulled from the STD HIV strategy and being given to the abstinence program. So I want to be very clear in my position. I'm not standing before you to say that the abstinence program is not valid, because for me on this floor, and including myself, I think abstinence is a valid program. But monies to STD and HIV are equally valid as well. The point that I would only make, and let me use the example so that hopefully everyone will understand where I'm coming from. If you have two children, does it make sense if you have two children to take food from one in order to feed the other? Because in my view, that's how I see this program. You're taking from one valid program in order to go to the other. And I think that is wrong. And that's why